Hello everyone and welcome back to another book review. Today we are reviewing another fantastic medieval book that features both medieval texts and medieval art. I have kind of been in this medieval vibe for a while now, and this is another fantastic book that I read, A Medieval Miscellany, selected by Judith Herrin with an introduction by Emmanuel Leroy Lowdery, I think is how you say that. But this book is unique and not like anything I have ever read. It was full of fantastic art, so despite not being too long, it took me quite a bit of time to work through, and I think this would be a fantastic book to either read, or if you have someone in your life who you're looking for a gift for, this could be a suggestion or an idea, because I had a fantastic time. This book, as the title, A Medieval Miscellany, I hope I'm saying that correctly, implies this book is not attempting to be a history of something or to describe something in the medieval world completely or with an academic, a thorough academic treatment. So the beginning of this book does skew more academic than I thought it was going to be, the introduction part, but it very quickly gets into the miscellany, the little parts of life. And this is something that's covered in the introduction when the author talks about the fact that the people who lived in the Middle Ages were, yes, they were history. They were part of, they kind of form the part of this human history that we kind of look back on. But sometimes we also forget that they were people. They had their own thoughts and opinions. And what this book is doing is, one, showing off fantastic medieval art from manuscripts, which I absolutely love. But two, it's also giving an opportunity to show some of these source materials where the people or writers or people who wrote in the medieval world are given an opportunity to have their words shine through. So the way the book is set up is, for example, there's a title. So this is On the Need for Discretion. The italics explain briefly what's going to be about. And I remember this section, this was from a series of letters between two people where one person was writing to a second person, warning them, hey, your letter's being read by everyone over here. Thank you for being discreet, but wink, wink, keep being discreet. And then this is the actual source text from the Middle Ages, translated into English. And along the side is fantastic medieval art with little explanations. And the art does tend to match what is going on, but not necessarily from the same text that is being pulled. And the selections are very small. We see this one, Magic, just has a little excerpt. Over here, A Shepherd's Duty has a little excerpt, but there is a lot of really fun stuff. And I think reading medieval voices, in their own words, gives a lot more life to the people who lived and also leads to a lot of interesting stuff. These medieval lives were not just history, they were people, and they had their own thoughts and opinions. And I think reading the own text, their own words, is very important. Something else that I really liked about this book is some of these pictures I had seen before, some of this art I had seen before from other texts, but it covered a lot of Jewish texts. It covered texts from the Byzantine world, and it even covered some texts from the Arab world and from North Africa, which I think was very unique and showed a lot of things that I had not seen before, and I think was very, very interesting. So I really liked the selection. I felt like the selection was really good. And also showed a lot of stuff that I was not familiar with at all. When going through this book, the last medieval book that I read was Medieval Dress and Fashion, which was super good. You can go watch my review of that. So I spent a lot of time looking at the outfits of the people, and that necessarily wasn't a feature of the book, but it was something that I paid a lot of attention to, having just come off of Margaret Scott's Medieval Dress and Fashion, which was another super cool book. So now I'm just going to show you some of the more interesting maybe read some of the more interesting things that came up when I read this book. And if you have read this book or have anything that you would like to share, of course, share it in the comment section below. The first was in a section, Misfortune, and this was just funny because I feel like it's something that the text is over about 1,000 years old, maybe a little under 1,000 years old. The sentiment still rings true. The Spanish poet Abraham Ibn Ezra wrote this short poem on misfortune in Hebrew. Out of luck. However I struggle, I cannot succeed, for my stars have ruined me. If I were a dealer in shrouds, no one would die as long as I lived. I felt like that was funny and just shows that people dealt with bad luck even today. And it's not maybe the phrasing I would use, but if I were a dealer in shrouds, no one would die as long as I lived was a rather funny line. that I think many of us can relate to. Page 41, this was Rag Day. This was, I'll read the little italicized excerpt or italicized explanation at the beginning. Students have contributed their own songs to the secular repertoire. This anonymous one is preserved in 12th century collection. So I'm just going to read the first section where I feel like student behavior has not changed in 1,000 years. Hooray, today is a holiday, a happy day, a jolly day, a day to strum guitars and play, the good old songs, the good old way, to love your neighbor and display the side of you that's bright and gay, and students most of all, for they excel at parties anyways. And then, I guess I'll read the second part too. So throw your books and slates away, there's food for which you needn't pay, free food. Forget the works of Ovid, eh? And tell his friends to go and play. Never mind what people say. Youth needs its recreations. Since the world is making hay, let's join the celebrations. I like the excelling at parties and the free food. That sums up college, and it has apparently for the last 1,000 years. I went to so many things in college just because they were handing out free pizza for students who showed up. I went to one that was like, how to get into medical school. I was not looking to go into medical school. I just thought it was fun. They offered free pizza and they were like, even if you don't think you're going to go to medical school, show up. And it was really interesting to hear the people talk about their experiences and what day-to-day class was like compared to like undergraduate. So I did learn a lot and I do think about it a lot, but I was just there for the free pizza. So page 143 on maybe a little bit more of a serious note. This was part of Reform of Prostitution. And I think it kind of points out that, and again, I don't know if this was historically accurate or maybe what was happening in Fantasyland, but it points out that maybe the issue isn't the moral saving of these women's souls. Maybe the issue is these women just needed money. So this is the Byzantine Emperor Michael IV, 1031 to 41, was a great philanthropist. His contemporary, the historian Michael Psellus, describes how he devised a plan for the salvation of lost souls. Here is the quote. Scattered all over the city was a vast multitude of harlots, and without attempting to turn them away from their trade by argument, that class of women is deaf anyway to all advice that would save them, without even trying to curb their activities by force, lest he earn a reputation of violence, he built in the queen of the cities a place of refuge to house them, an edifice of enormous size and very great beauty. Then, in the stentorian notes of the public herald, he issued a proclamation. All women who trafficked in their beauty, provided they are willing to renounce their trade and live in luxury, were to find sanctuary in their building. They were to change their own clothes for the habits of none, and all fear of poverty would be banished from their lives forever. Thereupon, a great swarm of prostitutes descended upon this refuge, relying on the emperor's edict, and changed both the garments and their manner of life. A youthful band enrolled in the service of God as soldiers of virtue. Almost like a lot of these women were doing this for money because they needed some way to pay. And I also think that Michael's showing a little bit of wisdom here in that he doesn't try to argue with these women because they need money, and if he's not going to provide any way for them to live, then they're not going to listen to him. But also he's not going to try to, quote, curb their activities by force, because even if you make it illegal, it just continues. It's the world's oldest profession for a reason. And shows that for a lot of these women, it's probably not something they engage in willingly. It's something that, I would think you could argue this to this day, it's something you engage in out of financial necessity for the most part. I won't speak for every single person, but I think financial necessity really has been the driving factor for a long time. And as we've seen here, according to this history, once you remove the fear of poverty, people make decisions that, I guess probably in Michael IV, the emperor is probably thinking more of their like soul, but also these women are just able to probably live a life of less stress. It is a rather dangerous profession. Page 155 had a very funny, some funny pictures. This is some ideas of how children might be in the womb. And I like these too. Clearly they hadn't figured that one quite out yet, which I don't know. I don't know if I saw a picture or what, but I feel like I kind of figured out how that the kid would be kind of curled up quite young. So I don't know. I guess these men weren't quite, great. My cat has decided to lick her behind right in front of the camera. Okay, and finally on page 199 there was something that I think was just really funny, because it reminded me of something in medieval dress and fashion. This is under Easter regulations as the holiest, and this is the little italicized explanation, as the holiest festival of the ecclesiastical calendar, the celebration of the resurrection, which brought to an end the period of fasting associated with Lent, was also a feast. The churchmen were anxious that Christians should not enjoy too many additional pleasures, as the canon passed in 692 makes clear. And here's the actual excerpt. From the holy day of resurrection of Christ until New Sunday, the faithful are to frequent the holy churches without ceasing during the entire week, with psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, rejoicing in Christ and celebrating, listening to the reading of Holy Scripture, and delighting in the holy mysteries. For thus shall we arise and be exalted together with Christ. In no wise, then, ought horse races or public spectacles to be performed during the aforesaid days. In other words, it reminded me of a quote from the Medieval Dress and Fashion, where they talked about these changes in fashions and then ended with a quote, and the clergy had more to complain about, because that does seem to be something they excelled at. Overall, this was an absolutely fascinating book. Highly recommend. I'd had it out for a couple weeks at this point, but I had just been putting it off, and I really should not have been putting it off because it was so good, and I do highly recommend. If you have read this book or have any thoughts or comments, please leave it in the comment section down below. I love to receive your thoughts and comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.